Today we're going to talk about drawing to learn. And I'm interested to learn more about this because we do have like an internal debate at STLI over the value of doodling. And some of us love to doodle either when we're in a meeting or to kind of capture an idea. We have one person on staff who doodles like as his main joy in life. And then, other people who are more like, no, rigid, like we've got to take notes or, do some other method of retaining this information. So you are in a discipline that kind of lends itself to visuals. So one thing I'd like to hear more about is what is drawing to learn? And then why do you think that it might apply beyond the scientific disciplines where drawing really makes sense?
Yeah. To me, drawing to learn is a big change. It's not a change one thing in and of itself. There's really good research that shows that it works. It is considered a core skill in some disciplines like chemistry and physics, creative design, engineering, that being able to sketch out things is considered a core skill. And in some other disciplines, it's been stated that it should be considered a core skill, like biology. It is really about how do you capture a concept or a series of events, how do you capture that concept in a sketch? And to me, it's also about how do you do that efficiently. So the drawing to learn research literature doesn't really talk about how do you make that efficient. Whereas I care about how do I get my students to learn as quickly as possible and effectively as possible. So when I'm thinking about drawing to learn, I'm thinking in terms of what I call minute sketches, which really should be called 30-second sketches, because any single concept you're trying to get should be something you capture in a sketch you could reproduce for practice to develop memory for it in 30 seconds. It's a minimalist sketch. But 30-second sketch doesn't trip off my tongue like a minute sketch. And if it's more complex, you do more sketches. You do more 30-second sketches rather than try and do one massive sketch. Another way to think about it is your sketch should be something that after you've done it, you could close your eyes and look away and hold the whole thing in your mind. If you can't, it's really more than one sketch. Even if you put it all down on one sheet of paper, it's more than one sketch, and then you flip between them if it's a series of events, for example. So that's the idea. So to do a minute sketch, students need to have a sense of what's essential about this concept. What are the core ideas for that concept? And that's tough. They're beginners. They don't know the material that well. And what I find is students have to have that modeled. So the change one thing that an instructor can do is do it once and just try it to see if it works. I really got started doing this deliberately when there was a concept in one of my courses that students consistently struggled with. I felt like I was doing a good job of explaining it in class, and I would have, usually in a big class, I would probably have 20 hours of office hours devoted to just re-explaining this thing. And after I had re-explained it and get students to do some of it for themselves, using a sketch that I had showed them, they would go away understanding it, and they would do fine on problems on it. So I spent about 15 minutes doing several tries and recorded a video of me on my iPad sketching this out with a voiceover. Same thing I was telling students. Sketching it out with a voiceover. I posted that on Blackboard and just told the class, hey, some of you were wondering about this. I put this up. I don't know if it'll help, but look at it if you want to. And I had it set up with track views. To my surprise, when I looked back a couple weeks later, 2/3 of the class had accessed it. And interestingly, the average number of views was 2 to 3 times, meaning it wasn't that they looked at it out of curiosity. They clearly thought it was useful enough that they did it again. And many students have told me that when they're looking at now one of the many videos that I make of things sketched out, that they needed to pause, they needed to go back, they would do their sketch, they would check the video again to see, did I really get it? And it gave them chances to self-assess and figure out what needed to go into their sketch. And I realized that's the same process students are doing in my office with me, one-on-one, except that It's me asking them, does it make sense? It's them realizing, wait, I don't get this part, and having me re-explain it. But on the video, they can just go back to the video, and they have the sketch modeled for them. I've shown them how to make a sketch. So that's how I got started doing the intensive drawing to learn in my classes. Over time, I've done a lot more of it, but that was a way to start that actually saved me time. From the moment I made that video, I spent a lot less time, and in every semester since, I spent a lot less time teaching that. I also realized I could save some lecture time, because instead of doing the presentation and then going back through it a couple of different times or ways because I knew how tough it was, I could just go through it and say, if this doesn't make sense, and I know it's a hard topic, so it probably won't make sense to most of you, here's this video, and if the video doesn't make sense, definitely talk to me about it. I have plenty of time in office hours because so many of you are going to find the video makes sense.
So it solved a teaching problem that you were having by having students sketch this out. It saved you lecture time that you could then either repurpose to answer important questions or
Sure.
review other content. And then students really engaged with it and used it, which is, it's not a great feeling when you put something on your Blackboard site and then you see that nobody's ever used
Right.
it. So I imagine that seeing that they, really were viewing
Yeah,
and reviewing it was affirming and validating for you.
And so there's a lot more on drawing to learn. I actually have a published paper on it that describes it if anybody's curious to see more of the background research literature, at least in biology, and I cite some of the other literature as well, and some things on minute sketching. But the core idea is simply to capture things in a sketch and have your students practice some version of it to remember it for themselves. And the sketches, we know, are easier for students to remember than, especially if they practice doing them for themselves, than just reading things over and over, or looking at things, or in actually most of the other ways they tend to study. There's another really important value to drawing to learn, which is that it enforces a sequence of events to what you're learning. Most of what we teach has sequence, the narrative arc of a story, part of history, the way you think about something in economics or biology or chemistry. It all has sequence. There's a way, maybe not a single way, but there are places to start and there are places to move through to get to the end. And when students study from notes, they are not necessarily following a logical sequence. They can be jumping around. If they're just looking at key words, for example, which a lot of students do, they're not following a logical sequence often. But when they sketch, they have to have an order. You can only sketch one thing at a time and it comes in a sequence. I used to tell students, I used to direct them initially about here's the sequence to follow. And I quickly found I did not need to do that, that students would, with a little bit of practice, fall into a logical sequence for all their sketches. They would realize, wait, there's no point in putting this part in because I haven't done this yet, and this comes first. And it forced them to think through things in sequence. I've had students tell me, well, yeah, it works in biology, but it doesn't work in other disciplines. When I've done workshops on this, faculty tell me, I can't see why it wouldn't work in what I do. It often helps for them to have an example. One of my YouTube videos is the novel Jane Eyre in Sketches. And I've used it to show the novel from two perspectives. Jane Eyre can be thought of as a romance, and it can be thought of as a morality tale. And my sketches for the two, in both cases, a timeline, and in both cases, distances on the timeline or location on the timeline is either further apart or closer romantically or in friendship. But when it's a morality tale, up at the top is high moral standards, and up at the bottom is when the characters are falling away from those standards. And it's the same events, but the story looks really different when you think of it from the two different perspectives. And once students do it, it makes it easy to see, oh yes, it can be looked at in more than one way. And now they also have a model to do model-based reasoning. So for example, you could ask, okay, in the morality tale, if you had this particular character either missing or not show up until later, how would it affect the morality tale? And then separately, how would it affect the romance?
This is one of my all-time favorite novels, and I'm a former English teacher, so you're speaking to that side of my heart right now. I love that.
So we hope you feel inspired to go out and change one thing in your teaching, and we want to hear from you. So please email us at stli@wm.edu. That's STLI@wm.edu if you would like to make an appearance here in Studio 36 or virtually in our virtual podcasting studio.